Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today I've got, should we call him the grandfather of carnivore diet? I don't know. The main man, whatever you want to say. Dr. Shawn Baker. Hi, Shawn.
Steve, hey man, it's good to have you. I'm sorry, good to be here. And like I said, I apologize. I was supposed to be on your online sort of conference a few weeks ago, and I just for some, what happened? My mother was in town, and my 81-year-old mother, and I was trying to show her a good time and taking her around, and I just totally I was so focused on my mom that I was like, oh crap, I've missed this damn conference because we'd scheduled it on a Saturday. I think we were going I was going to take her on a cruise, to a ferry boat cruise, and she was excited about that. So I apologize, but it's good to be here. It's good to talk to the folks in I guess the UK, but I'm sure you got listeners all over the world, I suppose. But it's good seeing you again, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and you're looking so healthy. I felt really bad saying the granddaddy of carnivore.
Well, I'm old enough to be a grandpa, but I'm trying not to act like one. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm 2 years older than you, and I always will be. So, I mean, I've got
that's true. Yeah, well, we talk about longevity. I always say, well, he's older than me. He knows what he's doing, right?
Yeah, I think we're good adverts for it. For people that don't know, what made you actually go carnivore? Can you remember the moment when you thought, this is it? I'm going to do this?
Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, this is back in sometime in 2016 when I'd been probably aware of these wacko, nutty, crazy zero carb people that are eating all meat since about 2015, 2014, something like that. There was a group called Zeroing In on Health, and Kelly Hogan and Amber O'Hearn and Charles Washington and the Anderson couple, and all these people were doing this and talking about it. And my first impression, these people are friggin' nuts, which is what everyone kind of thinks. And but I was sort of morbidly curious, and I kind of was just, checking out their little social media posts and saying, well, this sounds maybe plausible. Maybe there's something here. And I was already on a ketogenic diet at that point. So I was already sort of, kind of convinced that, there's other ways to have nutrition. Carbohydrates aren't necessary for really anything that I, absolutely have to have. And so, 2016, I said, well, I'm going to dabble with this. And I remember I did like one meal. I just said, oh, let's have steak and eggs for breakfast. Hold the orange juice, hold the, the whole wheat toast, hold the cup of yogurt, hold the piece of fruit, whatever might normally have. And yeah, meal went fine. I was like, oh, it was pretty good. I did okay. So then I just gradually went, 2 meals, and then I went a whole day, and then I went a couple of days. And, by the end of 2016, I'd managed to go for a month. And that was, that was kind of the start of it. And I remember specifically, like I had suggested, well, surely this is going to kill me as a joke. I'm going to die for sure. 1 month of only me, I'm going to die of scurvy. My heart's going to clog up. My colon would fall out from lack of fiber. None of that, of course, happened. I actually felt really good at the end of it. And so, I mean, that was late 2016. And so that began the sort of carnivore journey for me. And, I literally, when I was done with those 30 days, I said, okay, that was a fun experiment. Let me go back to my normal diet. And I mean, within 24 hours, I started feeling bad. I was just like, well, my gut's kind of feeling bad. My back was hurting a little inflammatory stuff going on. So I said, I like feeling good. So then I just started doing that. And then, here I am now 8 years later. And, I've convinced a few people to try it, I think.
I think you have. I mean, I got to my 55th birthday and joined MeatRx, and a great time, did your online course, and I will always be thankful for that. And I think, you have also that knock-on effect where I've recently got over 1,000 clients that I've been talking to, and over 200 success story videos out of that. So your experience then knocked onto me, and that's helped other people. I want to put a bit of meat on the bones because you've already touched on it just then. There are all these naysayers, and you mentioned a few of them, but I wouldn't mind just expanding a little bit more. You mentioned scurvy. I mean, that is such a classic one. I've never encountered a vitamin C deficiency, and I've done private blood tests for over a decade. So what would you say to someone that still brings that old chestnut up and says, well, where's your vitamin C coming from?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that meat has a small amount of vitamin C in it. It's not the RDA amount unless you eat a ton of meat, or you're eating, certain other animal products, some organ meats. You could probably do it, with a reasonable amount. So, but I mean, I think the reality is that we are able to be more efficiently utilize vitamin C on a carnivore diet. We need less of it. If we look at the roles of vitamin C, antioxidant, collagen production, carnitine metabolism, all of those things are largely supplied independently through a carnivore diet. I can go through all the various things, but to suffice it to say, I've literally encountered now probably close to tens of thousands of people doing this diet. I've never seen a bona fide case of scurvy. And this was known, 150 years ago. We knew that with the guys that were exploring the various poles, this North and South poles. I mean, they literally knew that access to, not dried meat, but undried meat, fresh meat was curative for scurvy. And it was both preventive and curative. So no one's getting scurvy. And I don't think they're I don't even think they're having these quote unquote subclinical vitamin C deficiency, which is the other thing. Oh, well, you may not get scurvy, but you're going to have this subclinical deficiency. And there's several, you can name the critics that have said this. And I'm like, well, what does that look like? Explain to me what subclinical vitamin C deficiency looks like. And I'm like, does it look like you're breaking world records and getting stronger and faster? And, that to me does not sound like a vitamin. And that's been my experience. And so, I've, like you said, I've yet to see anyone with a verified bona fide case of scurvy, because scurvy is fatal, and typically we understand it to start to taking effect in about a month, a month to a couple months, you should have full blown scurvy. You should be, bleeding out, your hemarthrosis, skin wounds, dying. That's not happening. I've seen a couple people, my gums got a little sensitive or bled. I said, well, there could be a lot of things that cause that. Sometimes we're used to this really soft diet and you're eating this meat that's now hard to chew. Maybe you're overcooking your damn meat and you just kind of do that. But I like you said, I've never seen a legitimate case of scurvy, or if there has been one, it has been so infrequent. You're more likely to get scurvy on a processed food diet by far. I mean, the few modern day cases we see are people just completely eating non-fresh food, whether it be fruit, vegetable, or meat. They're eating a bunch of non-fresh food, all like straight up ultra processed crap. And even then it's pretty rare, but you do see those cases of scurvy in those situations.
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned subclinical, and I've got something to show you later. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to get you on because you're the guest, but I will get into some TSH subclinical readings that I think we can do a good fault experiment on. But I would like to just nail a couple of the most common questions, because you're a doctor, you've been around with this a long time. The other question, I think you again alluded to, what about fiber?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's non-essential. I mean, it's clearly, you just don't need it. I mean, I think the confusion with fiber is it is associated, and again, association is not causation, but it's association with better health outcomes in a number of studies. I mean, we look at all kinds of research outcomes. They'll say higher fiber diets are associated with less cardiovascular disease, less death, less obesity, less cancer, and so on and so forth. But really, I think the real reason for that is that it is just it's largely a marker of a higher dietary quality. And so what do I mean by that? Well, if you're eating fibrous foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and things like that, you're less inclined to eat ultra-processed versions of those whole foods. So the difference between eating, whole grain versus refined flour, and that just changes the absorption characteristics. It slows down the amount of food we consume, we actually absorb. It basically increases the microbial or the biome interaction with the food. Our microbiome utilizes some of that food instead of us utilizing. When we turn something into powder, let's say some flour or some sugar or something like that, it's powdered, our body absorbs it pretty easily. The surface area is so high, it's easy to absorb, therefore we absorb more calories, therefore we get fatter, basically. So I think that's really the protective effects of fiber that we do see. And I think it's there, but again, it's relative to what? It's relative to an ultra-processed garbage standard Western diet, okay? There are a number of studies that are showing that are out there now that show that fiber can be deleterious. I mean, there's a great study on rheumatoid arthritis, showing that fiber interacting with a particular bacterial species called Prevotella, and I can't remember the species name, but it shows exacerbation of rheumatoid arthritis flares by consuming more fiber. There are obviously the constipation study everybody's familiar with by now. Removing fiber actually improves or cures chronic constipation. The other thing that a lot of people like to talk about is the role that fiber may play in the protection of the intestinal mucosa, particularly the colonic mucosa. There's this belief that fiber is converted into short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyric acid, and that is going to provide a protective role and provide energy for the colonocytes so they can develop this protective mucous membrane or mucus layer. And we know, and there's a great paper that Tommy Wood, Dr. Tommy Wood, Dr. Lucy Mayling did, one other author, I can't remember, about 2 years ago, looking at the metabolic flexibility of the gut. And they show unequivocally that, yes, you can get that protection from fiber, but there's about 6 other ways you can do it. Protein can do it, being in ketosis can do it. So you don't need the fiber. It's not essential. It's clearly not essential. I would argue, relative to meat, it's probably relatively detrimental. And there are all, as you know, I mean, there are many, many people that see their gut health dramatically improve by the removal of fiber from their diet, whether it's IBD, IBS, gastrointestinal reflux disease, you name it. I mean, there's any kind of, issue often gets better with the removal and avoidance of fiber. So it's just not neat. I mean, it's literally indigestible. We have no capacity to digest fiber. I mean, I've talked to people that have ileostomies where their colon's been removed, right? And they will tell me if they eat whatever they eat, if they eat vegetables and they cut up in little triangles and swallow up in little triangles, it comes out of their bag in the shape of a little triangle. Literally, there is zero digestion of this stuff that's occurring in our intestines. And the only thing that occurs is a little bit of fermentation in our distal intestine or our colon. And there's a nice study that came out, I think, in 1978, and they compared a high fiber diet to a very low fiber diet. And they looked at the protein and the carbohydrate and the fat content of the feces and see how much is being wasted. The fiber doubled it. So basically, if you like to poop all your nutrition into the toilet, or not all, but most of it, or a large part of it out of there, and you can lose weight doing that by just, eating this food and then crapping it all out, not absorbing most of it. It's an incredible waste of money. All right. You think about food price, like in the U.S. right now, food prices are high. It's like you're just paying to make more poop and you're not even nourishing yourself. So why do you want to do that? Why don't you just eat something that you can absolutely absorb and actually provide the benefits of nutrition rather than just making larger bowel movements? And there's no prize for that. You don't get a prize at the end of at your end of life saying, look, you crapped out, 17 kilometers worth of shit. I mean, you're not going to get a prize for that at the end of your life. I mean, it's unnecessary. It is conditionally beneficial. If you're eating a standard American Western garbage diet and you eat more fruits and vegetables, yeah, that's probably a net positive. But to say it's essential is, I think we have to have the nuance that goes with that.
Yeah, I think Zoe Harcum has a wonderful phrase where she said, what is the definition of fiber? It's an indigestible polysaccharide. Lots of sugar you can't digest, which is what that translates to. And I think that sums it up. That's a great answer, Shawn. The last one, which is, I know the answers to this, but what about fruit and veg? I mean, aren't you going to miss out on all those vital nutrients from fruit and veg if you go carnivore?
Yeah. Well, again, there's a great paper that is done courtesy of Stefan van Vliet and Fred Provenza, I think 2021, 2022, something like that. Meat has a whole host of phytonutrients in it. Phytonutrients, the things we think we get from plants. Beef has that. I mean, probably, and lamb, and likewise any grazing animal, particularly ruminants. And so they have, a cow can eat so much more diversified plant food than I could as a human. I would get sick if I tried to attempt to eat all the plants that cows can consume. And because of that, they actually have a wider range of phytonutrients they have access to. And believe it or not, it's actually stored in their tissues, and it's stored in concentrations which aren't, inconsequential. And oh, by the way, they're more bioavailable to us anyway because of the way they're packaged. They're not packaged with anti-nutrients. They're not packaged with fiber. And so you will get phytonutrients from eating meat. Now, most people think of beef as, protein, some fat, a couple of vitamins and minerals. But the reality is beef has something like 70,000 potentially nutritional compounds in it. I mean, this is, again, based on metabolomic work by Van Vliet and others. And so knowing that, and to be honest, we probably don't, of those 70,000 compounds, we only know what a fraction of them do. So we get all this nutrition, most of which we don't even know what it does for us yet. And there was this is another paper they did comparing the Impossible Burger, that ultra processed sludge that you're trying to pass off as meat, which fortunately no one's buying. They compared those, side by side, and they did a metabolomic profile. They looked at thousands of compounds, phytonutrients, regular nutrients that are found in both, and they found that there's only a 10% overlap. So that Impossible Burger only provided 10% of the overall nutrition that you could find in beef. And even though if you look at the label and it shows you, fat, calories, protein, fat, like 5 ingredients, whatever's on the back of the label, and they're showing they're relatively equivalent, they're not even close. I mean, there's a 90% difference in nutritional makeup of these things. So it's that the fruit and vegetable stuff, as you point out, Zoe, she wonderfully points out that the whole get your 5 a day or whatever was just totally marketing bullshit. They just pulled out of their ass and said, we think 5 a day is a good number. Let's go with that. There's no real science to support any of that.
Yeah, the 5 a day is actually copyrighted or trademarked, and in other countries they have to say 7 a day or something. I want to go back. That's a real thing. You're smiling there, Shawn, but that's a real thing. You mentioned subclinical, and I wasn't going to do this so early, but I want to share some bloods with you, and if that's okay. And we have got people listening on an audio podcast. This will be audio. But I think it's really interesting because people worry about their doctors or their physician, healthcare provider saying this is subclinical, and they worry. And I asked the client if I could share this because he's been really worried about his thyroid for about 4 years. We've been tracking it. And for those that can't see the screen, the TSH is the thing that the physicians are always worried about because the range is 0.4 to 4. And in 2020, his was 0.34. So, yes, subclinical. But his thyroid, or T4, was 17, with the range is 10 to 20. And every single year, 2021, 22, 23, it's always been very low. I mean, it's 0.13 now as he's gone carnivore, and he's still got T4 of 17. We also did some T3, and it always converts well to T3. So the point I wanted to get to you, Shawn, is I spoke to this client and said, look, the problem is we are constantly wedded, not myself, but many influencers are wedded to these normative ranges, and therefore you get the phrase subclinical and it scares the living daylights out of you because he's absolutely petrified, even though he feels fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I said, let's imagine you're the first person that ever gave blood, and you've been doing this for 4 years, and we looked at your T4, and we knew that you needed to be between 10 and 20, and you are every time. Therefore, your TSH is perfect. It's not subclinical. Or, flip it around. If you had 10 times as much TSH, you would produce way too much T4. Do you have any comments on sort of the normative ranges that we seem to be wedded to that don't seem to be relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think clinical function is far more instructive to us than any lab number for the most part. There's obviously some weird exceptions to this, but I think that particularly with thyroid, you look at what TSH is responding to. TSH is called thyroid stimulating hormone. It is a hormone that's produced in the pituitary, and it's basically sensing how much thyroid we have available. There's mechanisms that feedback, and if the body says we don't have enough thyroid, the TSH goes up. And then when we see in hypothyroidism, the TSH goes up quite high. It'll go above the range, right? Now, there's a concept, and this is something that's hard to measure, so we don't measure it. The thyroid has a receptor, right? And just like in insulin, there's insulin receptors, there's androgen receptors, there's estrogen receptors, receptors for every hormone in our body. And the sensitivity of those receptors, when we talk about insulin sensitivity, all say, well, I want to be insulin sensitive. It's real important, right? What if you're thyroid sensitive, right? Well, that's good. I guess it would be. You would assume it is. So maybe I just need less hormone to get the job done, But it's, I think... I've not seen, outside of Graves' disease, let's say he has Graves' disease and he's got, the ophthalmic eyes and the super high metabolism, he can't keep weight on, and he's got all the weird, Graves' disease signs and symptoms. But absent of anything like that, clinical function, I feel great. I'm not clinically hypothyroid or hyperthyroid. I don't get too excited about the numbers out of that honestly, because there are people that just their numbers are just not, well, they just line up perfectly like the average population for whatever. Maybe they're on a weird diet. Maybe there's some other thing going on with them. I will share the fact that I do not have super high testosterone. My testosterone runs in low normal. Yet, here I am. I'm stronger than 99.99% of the guys my age. I don't take steroids. I don't take TRT. I know people keep accusing me of that, but I don't take any of that stuff. But I likely have very sensitive androgen receptors. And why might I have that? Well, one, we know that carnitine can do that. I mean, I eat, tons of carnitine. I work out, so I'm obviously stimulating my receptors. And I don't eat that often. And we know that all the combination of those things have all been shown to improve our androgen receptor sensitivity and probably density. And so I don't get too excited about, some random number. Unless, if he was coupled with, let's say he had clinical hypothyroidism, then you say, hey, maybe there's something wrong with your pituitary. Maybe your pituitary's got some sort of issue. Maybe there's pituitary, adenoma or something like that that's leading to, whatever, insufficient hormone production or TSH production. But outside, you would expect a lot of pituitary, you have visual changes because, it sits right near that optic chiasm. I just can't get too excited about that. If the guy had clinical symptoms and was saying, look, I feel kind of like garbage or something, there's something off, then you would say, hey, maybe there's something here. What are you going to do about it? I mean, there's various thoughts on that, but I mean, this is one of those things where, gosh, most people, he might even be having really good thyroid function. It may be the opposite situation where he's like, wow, the normal person to have, because thyroid may just be really effective at producing thyroid now, and that might be that some testament to a good thing, perhaps, if it was like, if it took a TSH of 2.5 to get the same result, you would say, oh, that's fine, you're doing okay. But it might be saying, hey, look, you just need less thyroid stimulating hormone to do this. And remember, there are, as you mentioned, these normative ranges or these sort of reference ranges are just a guess based on a population of people who probably aren't you. I mean, like I said, when you're a carnivore, I guarantee we just don't have data. I mean, we it'd be nice to do, and hopefully we can do that over time as we get more data, is to start saying, hey, these are carnivore average ranges, and they look a little different. I think we'll see things like, certainly cholesterol. We'll see things like thyroid hormone. We'll see things like folate levels and all these different things, vitamin D levels, perhaps, that are maybe not lined up with the general population, but perhaps maybe completely normal for that population. And again, it's like, just like the difference between men and women. I mean, we know now, after 50, 100 years of this, that women have different numbers than men. I mean, the most obvious thing is, estrogens, progesterones, right? Testosterones. That's pretty clear. But women and men tend to run different in other numbers too, like, red blood cell counts. Women tend to have a little lower on average range than men do. And that took a while to develop that, right? It wasn't something that we just, and that's half the population. A little more than half the population. There's slightly more women than men in the world. It took us a long time to figure that out. And you're like, well, the carnivore population is not even 1% of the population right now. It's going to grow as I'm sure it will. So maybe at some point, someone will have the bright idea. So, well, let's see what the normal range is in this population. Maybe it's a little different. We can explain that rather than, oh my God, you don't conform to the average sick fat, UK person or the average sick fat American. Oh my God, there must be something wrong. So that's how I look at those things.
Yeah, and I think this is my experience. And again, I'm going to take my hat off to you to give me a chance to be a coach, because I've seen thousands of bloods now, and clinical presentation, how the people present does not reflect in their bloods. And I get both ends of the scale, like that guy there. He has no problems at all, and he's constantly being told that's subclinical. But I get that all the time. I also get the reverse, where people will send me bloods and say, look at this, I'm perfect. And I will say, how do you feel? And they're like, absolutely terrible. Because we are different. I definitely think, Amy Berger as well was also talking about this, that the normative ranges are irrelevant. And your testosterone is sort of another one that shows, what is the point of testosterone? It's sort of it makes you male, it makes you strong, it makes you what you are. And clearly yours is working. So you're not struggling when you're doing your deadlifts. You certainly... No,
I just did a lifetime PR, literally a lifetime PR 2 days ago on the trap bar. And I have not, to be fair, I've only been doing that trap bar deadlift for about 10 years, but still, I'm almost 58 years of age. I'm hitting lifetime strength PRs at this age. And that, that doesn't go with someone who's clinically hypogonadal or anything like that. I mean, I've got enough testosterone to do what I need to do. And, my brain works, arguably. I mean, my sexual function works. You'll have to take my word for that, but I can tell you it does. But, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you just have to, I mean, a good physician will first examine the patient, take an H&P, see what's going on, and then look at the labs. And so many people these days is look at the lab, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Well, hell, maybe nothing, or maybe a lot of things. I don't know. Let's talk to you. Let's figure it out. But that's the problem with access to labs. And as you know, the reason we focus on labs because they're easy to get. They're not the most instructive thing for us, and they're dynamic. I mean, I changed my cholesterol almost 200 points in 18 hours. So, I mean, knowing that, it's like, well, how reliable are these things for chronic outcomes? If my cholesterol can change 100, nearly 200 points from one day to the next, I'm like, well, how valuable is that piece of information to me? What's more valuable to me is how much belly fat do I have hanging on me? Because I guarantee that ain't changing in 24 hours. That's months and months and months of something. The direct lifestyle thing, that's a measure of what's going on really chronically. And so the fact we're measuring blood for all this stuff is just mostly out of inconvenience and not because of it's, that clinically relevant for us. I mean, we there's a whole, there's hematology is a whole entire field of this, lab clinical science is based on this stuff. But it's basically inferring things the best we can from a really suboptimal piece of information. It's like I don't know, try to solve a crime when, you've only got a flashlight with really low battery power at night. It's like, well, shit, I can only see so much. Let me take my best guess. It'd be a lot better if we turn the lights on, right? But anyway, that's my thoughts on that, or some of them.
Yeah, well, you snuck in that word there, cholesterol, which is, one of the things, it's a bugbear of mine because there's many influencers out there seem to be wedded to the normative ranges and absolutely can't seem to understand that 70 years ago, the Sugar Research Foundation actually were fraudulent and got scientists to say that fat was bad when in fact it was sugar. So they're still hanging on to this. And LDL comes up as another thing that people are worried about constantly. Even friends of mine who should know better will say, oh, my LDL is a bit high. I'm really worried about this diet. I mean, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, well, I think in part, there's a couple ways to tackle this question. So first of all, I think that if we look at LDL as its role in causality for atherogenic cardiovascular disease, right? I think there's some potential role for this. Now, I think it's conditional. I don't think it's the be-all, end-all necessary. Perhaps necessary, but is it sufficient on its own? I think probably not. And I know some people would disagree with that. And the reason I say this is because more and more data has come out showing that there are people with high cholesterol that do not ever develop heart disease or develop it at such a slow rate that it sort of makes you ask the question, why is that? And the counter to that is, well, there's people that smoke packs a day every year and they don't get cancer, right? Okay, fair enough. But why don't they get cancer? Maybe we should ask them. Maybe we should study those people and say, why is this guy who smokes 2 packs a day never gets cancer? Maybe there's something different about him. Lifestyle that is actually protective, right? We can still say it's causal and maybe you shouldn't do it. But what if we actually looked in those people and said, hey, if you got X, Y, and Z in place and you're immune to cancer, and then maybe cigarette smoking isn't something we have to do. I'm not at all. Don't just misconstrue to say that I'm promoting smoking, because I'm not, because I think it's bad in many other ways. But I think that there is, obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with the work of, that Dave Feldman initiated, now being expanded by Matt Budoff and others, Nick Norwitz and so on and so forth. The lean mass hyperresponder cohort, Mortensen out of Denmark 2 years ago published a really nice study looking at zero CAC score. Well, it was a Western Danish heart registry study. Had something like 50, 60,000 patients. They followed them. If they had zero CAC score, their LDL cholesterol was irrelevant. It had no bearing on whether their outcome showed, MACE, major adverse cardiac events, heart attacks, strokes, revascularizations, sudden death, things like that. LDL was meaningless. What was meaningful in that study was smoking and diabetes. So if you had a zero CAC score, but you were diabetic, yeah, you're still going to have an issue. So, I think we're finding out that, while LDL cholesterol Well, let me just, I guess I should say this. If you are on a standard UK diet or standard American diet, and you're obese, and you are pre-diabetic, and you have high blood pressure, and you, whatever, in chronic inflammation, and your cholesterol is high, that's probably a bad situation. And if you're unwilling to do anything else, and you're not going to lose weight, and you're not going to fix your metabolic health, then you probably should lower your cholesterol. I mean, I think that's, I mean, it's in the sense of like this. I mean, if I bring my cholesterol down to 0, the chances of me getting a heart disease are tremendously diminished. I think that's a fair statement, right? Now, if I don't want to have a sexually transmitted disease, I could always lop off my penis, and I would minimize that risk too. But there's some downside to that, I would argue. I think most people would agree with that. So, I mean, it's like, is that the right tool for the job? Why not instead lose the weight, fix the diabetes, do all the things that we talk about all the time, change your risk stratification profile, and then you can say, hey, what's the residual risk here? And any imaging, of course, has a tremendous role there, because you can kind of actually see, and I know people say, well, the late stage, you shouldn't wait till the end and blah, blah, blah. But honestly, I think the data that we're seeing, and the data that hopefully will be, already some of it has been published, Matt Budol's study on the lean mass hyperresponder cohort, the Mortensen study that I alluded to, and some others. I think within that Mortensen study, they also saw, I think, something like a huge number of people with FH, familial hypercholesterolemia. These are people with genetically, chronically super high LDL cholesterol. And guess what? In that population, 60% of those people had no advanced signs of heart disease, in their 50s and stuff like that. So that's also eye-opening. It's like, why is 60% of the people that have chronically lifetime super high LDL cholesterol not developing heart disease? What else is going on? So I think when we start to look at what else is going on, then we have this very different perspective on how to manage cardiovascular disease. And like I said, I'm not the guy that's going to tell people to ignore it. I think if your LDL cholesterol is high, your ApoB is high, your total cholesterol, whatever you want, whatever metric you want to measure, they all run the same direction. I think they basically show more or less the same thing. Get some more information and then make your decisions there. Because what I'm comfortable doing with myself, my own body, that's different, because I know what's going on with me, better than anyone else, because it's me. But I mean, I don't know everything about every other person, so it's hard for me to say, hey, ignore it. I mean, yes, there has been a lot of deception that's gone on in research. Yes, the sugar industry tried to sabotage fat. I mean, that all happened. There is a lot of conflict of interest in science. There's a lot of unethical things in science. There's a lot of, quite honestly, bad and malicious science out there. So we have to deal with that. And the other thing that I'm seeing, and I think this is what we're going to see. They've made in excess of $1 trillion on lipid lowering drugs, statins in particular. $1 trillion, that's a lot of money. Now those drugs are all off patent. They're still making a couple billion a year, so it's still a lot of money. I mean, hell, I'd be happy with a couple billion a year, right? They're still making that money on that. But what are they going to now? What are they pivoting to now? Well, they're pivoting to the GLP-1s, right? Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, these, and they're talking about, look at the cardiovascular protective profile these drugs have. So we're going to see a shift from a drug that doesn't make as much money anymore to a drug that makes a lot of money. I mean, this is another $1 trillion drug, right? And so what are they going to do? They're going to start, changing the narrative. And the narrative will change when the money incentive changes. And this is what we're going to see. We're just going to see more and more cardiologists talking about the greater importance of, GLP-1, because God forbid you actually do a low-carb diet and get the same benefit anyway without the side effects and the expense. But, they're going to be talking about that more, and they're going to kind of just be a little more softer on the cholesterol thing. You're seeing the studies out right now. 40% of the people in mainstream media, 40% of the people on statins don't need to be on them. Why is that? Because they need to be on GLP-1s. So we're going to see that. We're going to see this narrative shift. I mean, and it's all financially driven in many ways. Now, is it clinically going to be any better? I don't know. The cynic in me says probably not. I mean, I hope so. Maybe it is. I mean, I like that just for the health and humanity. Maybe it'll help. But I mean, it's just tied to money, as you know. I mean, gosh, you can't be right. You can't live long enough in this world not to realize that greedy people do unethical things to get money. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And I mean, they have great marketing. When you've got a $1 billion marketing budget, how many scientists can you pay? How many, media people can you pay? How many influencers and celebrities can you pay? to get your message out there. And that's what they do, right? So, so, you know, I mean, the, you know, the cynic in me says probably not. I mean, I hope so. Maybe it is. I mean, it's just tied to money, as you know. I mean, gosh, you can't be right. You can't live long enough in this world not to realize that greedy people do unethical things to get money. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And I mean, they have great marketing. When you've got a $1 billion marketing budget, how many scientists can you pay? How many, media people can you pay? How many influencers and celebrities can you pay to get your message out there? And that's what they do, right? So That's what we're looking at. And, we're out here talking about, hey, just stop eating garbage, just eat some real food, get out there and, sleep, get some exercise. And of course, there's not as much money to be made in that, or at least not as much quick money. I think there's money to be made in this space. And I think, like I said, for you guys that don't know, I'm, the founder of a company called Rivero, and that's our mission. We're licensed in all 50 states, and we that's our goal. We have physicians that get this. And so I think we can actually provide not only tremendous clinical value to patients, to fix them, to get them off the medications, but also we can save companies money, tremendous money on healthcare costs, and that is a financial incentive. So I think there's ways to leverage that.
So yes, with Rivero, obviously you got physicians who are on board with this way of thinking. Just for balance, I mean, I believe in the thrombogenic.
Malcolm Kendrick's clot thickens. Yeah, I mean, sure, okay, yeah, and we can talk about that. And I've read Malcolm's book. I've interviewed Malcolm, and I think that there's probably certainly something there. I mean, for sure. I mean, you can point to the atherogenicity of triglycerides and the all the other things that go on when you have rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. You're now more atherogenic and more inflamed, and the rates of cardiovascular disease go up tremendously. Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned FH, for instance, that's a great example. If 60% of people with very, very high LDL are not getting heart disease, then you do have to question that theory. And after 70 years, it's still a theory. And I do believe like damage to the endothelium and blood vessel damage and all those sort of things have,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the animal models to develop atherosclerosis, they generally have to damage the vessels first to make it work. I mean, they generally go in there with some sort of mechanical rotor, and they rough up the endothelium and watch the disease progress. I mean, that's a model for developing cardiovascular. So yeah, I mean, sure, that has to. I think that's part of the pathology.
Cool. And now Ozempic, I was going to talk to you about that, but you brought that in earlier. I mean, I like talking about increasing hormones and all that. I'd like to just expand a little bit on Ozempic, because one of the things that I've noticed is that not only do you lose body fat, but you also lose muscle. And it's something like for 8 pounds of fat you lose about 5 pounds of muscle. And there's this thing now, Ozempic face, because you even lose muscle in your face. I mean, do you see maybe 2-3 years down the line that people that have taken Ozempic will be doing like a class action? Can you see any possible?
Yeah, there will be. I mean, they're already poisoned. But I mean, there's going to be enough people harmed by the drug. There will be class action lawsuits. I mean, those things are already being developed. I mean, there's lawyers that say they have tens of thousands of claims already. So yeah, I mean, there are going to be a number of people that are harmed from this. I mean, probably at some point they'll pay a fine. It'll be some slap on the wrist. Maybe it'll be $1 billion. But that's literally their spare change. Let me go look in the cookie jar. Oh, we got $1 billion laying around. That's built into the product. I mean, that's literally built into the pricing structure. They know they're going to get caught harming people, and that's just the cost of doing business. And I think that, I mean, yes, well, most diets, you're going to lose some degree of muscle loss. Now, is Ozempic driving greater proportionally than others? I think for some people, certainly, and you don't want to lose that lean mass. Now, can you mitigate that if you're on Ozempic? Yeah, you can to some degree. I mean, eat a lot of protein, work out. I mean, that's what, if I was on the drug, and I'm not necessarily advocating the drug, but I would say, hey man, make sure you're loading up on the protein, make sure you're training your ass off. I mean, but you should be doing that stuff anyway, right? And you probably wouldn't need to be on the damn drugs in many cases. There are a number of concerns, as you know. I mean, the GI side effects alone are gonna harm thousands and thousands of people, and this is because we look at what are GLP-1 receptor agonists. Well, they mimic GLP-1. What is GLP-1? GLP-1 is an incretin hormone. What is GLP-1 specifically? It's an incretin hormone that's produced in the small intestine, particularly in the ileum, right? And so the ileum is the end of our small intestine. And why is that there? Well, we look at, there's this phenomenon known as the ileal break, right? And so when I consume nutrition, what's meant to happen is I break it down in my stomach, and then I start absorbing it in my small intestine. And then hopefully by the time whatever's left gets to my bowel, I've sucked all the nutrition out of there. I've absorbed it. If you consume food and there's too much and it starts like making its way down to the small intestine and into the ileum, before it's fully digested, the ileum senses that. And it says, whoa, things are coming in too fast. sends out some GLP-1. The GLP-1 slows down digestion, slows down the migratory motor complex, and the stuff just slows down. So now you have more time to digest. That's why we can change our gastrointestinal transit time. That's why when you eat a bunch of crappy fiber, your body says, we don't need this crap. Get it out of here. Poop it all out. A lot of people, I ate this big old green smoothie and an hour later I was crapping my brains out. So the normal function of GLP-1 is to slow things down in response to appropriate nutrition. And by the way, there's studies on beef isolate. Shows it tremendously effective at slowing down or releasing GLP-1. So beef is a great food. It is you could call it nature's Ozempic if you want. I know it's kind of corny, but I mean, it has that impact, but it's in a physiologically appropriate way. Like I said, it's like, people that take, I don't know, any whatever drug. I mean, there's supposed to be a small bolus and it goes down and then, physiologically when you need it. So when you go on Ozempic, you don't get this small bolus. You get this massive, to the ceiling, 100 feet up in the air, and it hangs around for a week until you have to bolus it again. And what happens then is like the gut is just slowed down permanently. And it's like everything you put in there, doesn't go through. You get full, you start burping, literally stuff that's supposed to be digested is rotting in your stomach, like these foods that are normally supposed to be being passed through. So people will say, well, they'll have belches that it smells like a dead animal is in their friggin', in their stomach, or they have, or they get gastroparesis, Sometimes that's a permanent thing, gastroparesis of the stomach, and your stomach is permanently paralyzed in some cases. That F's you up for the rest of your life. So we're going to see a lot of that. The other thing that is interesting, and some of these GLP-1s do this, maybe not all of them, but some do, they lead to what's called fat cell hyperplasia. So when fat cells grow, there's basically two options. The cell itself can get bigger, or it can turn into more of them. And the small little cells tend to be considered healthy, right? And so while you're on the drug, you have maybe more fat cells, even though you've lost weight, but there's more fat cells. They're just really small. Well, what happens when you have to come off the drug? Side effects. You can't afford it. Your insurance stops paying for it. They run out, right? So now you got all these extra little tiny fat cells, and guess what? They start getting hungry. Guess what happens when they get fed? They go get bigger and bigger. So now you got more fat cells than you started with. And, and so let's say you don't tolerate the drug. Now you're like fatter than you used to be. And so I think what we're going to see is these people that are going to be like, oh, I took Ozempic for a year or two and then they couldn't take it. And then 3 years later, they're going to be like, it effed me up. I'm miserable now. My quality of life is worse. Maybe I'm going to sue the manufacturer, whatever. I mean, it's ultimately, again, it's a therapeutic Band-Aid. I mean, obviously the business model is keep people on this drug for the rest of their life. And this is what they're positioning people at, with obesity is like diabetes. It's as you know, diabetes is unreversible. It's a lifetime progressive disease, which is also bullshit, right? I mean, but that is the narrative they're going to sell, and people are going to buy it. Oh, I can't, woe is me. I'm a victim. I just need to be on drugs for the rest of my life. And you, the taxpayer, have to help subsidize it, or you, the insurance premium payer, has to help subsidize my disease, which is lifestyle driven, which I, for some reason, can't fix, And I mean, I get it. Some people are just like they've tried and they can't do it, but it's my belief that the vast majority of people have it within their own power. They're not disempowered, have it within their own power and capability to fix most of their issues. Now, some people prefer the victim card and some of that. I'm not, like I said, I know some people get mad about this statement, but that's the reality. But I mean, some people need a lot of help. I mean, I get it. I do it every day. I'm in there holding people's hands, I mean, not literally, but I mean, through digitally or whatever I'm trying to do, just saying, look, a motivation, accountability, setting up, these things. This is the one thing I found as a physician, that even if I wanted to do the right thing, as an orthopedic surgeon, it's damn near impossible, because I mean, my job there was just to grind. I mean, it's like a darn treadmill of patients coming in all day long. It's go, 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 operate, make the hospital lots of money. In order to effectively treat people with a lifestyle intervention, you need a tremendous amount of resource, in my view. For many people, not everybody, many people do. And the resources that we have spent for that in sort of mainstream medicine is almost zero. Like I said, for me to do a surgery or take care of a surgical problem, I had at my disposal literally millions of dollars of resources. I had an operating room that cost $200 a minute to run. I had an entire operating staff. I mean, an anesthesiologist. I had a guy from radiology who'd walk down there for a surgery and stand there in a lead apron for 3 hours. You know why? Well, I dick around doing, fixing X-ray. I don't have that for life. I got nobody's going to stand there in a lead apron for 3 hours doing lifestyle stuff for me. I don't have a lab. I don't have a PT team. I don't have an imaging center. I don't have a multi-million-dollar clinic. But that's what, to truly fix that with lifestyle, we would need that. And we just don't want to pay for that. Because why? Because it doesn't make certain people as much money. It doesn't make the hospital CEO money. It doesn't make the pharmaceutical companies money. It doesn't make the guy who owns the PT clinics money or something, on and on. I mean, you were in there. I mean, you did some of that stuff. And so, I mean, it's a very different paradigm, and it's not well resourced. And we're trying to do that. That's what we're doing with Rivera. We are literally providing those resources that are needed. And I think we're going to be very successful.
I think you will. Yeah. I mean, you're very inspirational and you've got a good team there. I will come back to that. I've got about 3 questions. I do want to add that, I mean, my little contribution is online coaching. When you said about the Ozempic, what would you say about muscle loss? You said, well, train, lift heavy weights, eat enough protein. The third bit there is eat the right food, then you don't need it at all. And it's really frustrating because it can be that simple. I was really shocked when I looked at the American Diabetes Association's standard of care for physicians, literally admitting in writing that it's probably better to tell people to eat carbs because at least then the patients are compliant, which I find astonishingly bad. And that's in the documentation, just to make sure that the patients are following what the doctor says. Don't even rock the boat, which is an admission that carbohydrates are a problem. And for people that can't believe that, I will actually put a link in the description so they can actually read that. And I know people like Ken Berry, I think in cahoots with Ben Bickman and Tony Hampton and a few others, are doing the alternative to the American Diabetes Association, which is
the American Diabetes Society or something. I think. Yeah, Ken announced one. I think one on his live stream when I was talking to him, he announced that a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Oh boy, is that needed? So you are doing Rivero, and Ken's doing that. I think together you're going to make a big difference. I would like to just cover two final questions. I am aware of your time. One is a really simple one, I think, because when people talk about carnivore, a lot of them are worried about their kidney health, despite the fact that I have absolutely tons of success stories on my YouTube channel and also some written reviews. They're still wedded to this idea that protein is bad for kidneys. I mean, what would you say about kidney health when you're eating?
Yeah, well, there's been numerous studies that have shown that to be completely false. I mean, starting with Stu Phillips' meta-analysis in 2018 basically showed that high protein diets versus low protein diets, no clinical difference. David Unwin, who's there in the UK, has literally published papers on diabetics with renal failure. I mean, not renal failure, but chronic renal insufficiency that have gotten better by increasing the protein, that have actually, reversed their kidney disease. I mean, there was another paper just came out. I think another meta-analysis came out a couple of weeks ago. Same sort of thing. Higher protein diets protect kidney function. So this is a unfortunate bit of misinformation, if you want to use that term, that has been around for 40 years now, since the 1980s. I mean, this is based on some of the work Dr. Brenner did on mice. And mice and humans just have inherent differences. And mice on a high protein diet, yes, they will have glomerular damage, but it's never been shown in humans. I mean, again, we see the associational data. People that eat standard American junk food diets that have more animal protein, have higher rates of kidney disease because they have higher rates of diabetes, but it's just because they have a garbage diet. It's not the meat. We know that when kidneys are failing, they spill more protein. Does not mean that protein is causing the disease. It's just a symptom. It's just like having a fever when you have, a bacterial infection. It's not the fever that's the problem. It's a symptom. So it's not like, I got to avoid staying by open flames because fire causes disease. Don't burn yourself, but you get it. I mean, it's just, and even physicians who theoretically are intelligent people. I mean, some are, some aren't, but I mean, it's like, they're just kind of duped into this stuff because they've never really taken care of people on a high protein. Even the way we measure kidney function in the context of a high protein setting. I mean, like I said, the simple fact that we use serum creatinine to calculate a GFR, an estimated GFR, and we've been doing that for 100 years or whatever it's been. I think it's about 100 years we've been doing this. There are better tests, and there are tests that, because dietary protein is a confounder. It's not a disease problem. It's not a disease pathology. If you got a little old lady that eats, like a bird and has barely any protein and her serum creatinine is sky high, yes, her kidneys are failing. You get a big muscular person who works out at the time, eats a lot of protein and has high creatinine. That's just because they work out all the time. They have a higher muscle, they have higher protein turnover. It's not kidney failure. But most doctors are too stupid to know this. So what do? Oh, well, I recommend you cut back on your protein. Why don't you order the right damn test? And why don't we figure out this is actually a problem? Go get a cystatin C, if nothing, or directly measure it. I mean, both of these are estimates, but you could directly measure kidney function. And I'm sure there's been countless nephrology consults that have been done where they say, oh, this guy's got elevated creatinine, send him to the nephrologist. The nephrologist actually measures, because you can actually directly measure, not estimate. And they say, there's nothing wrong with you. Get out of here, kid. So, it is a unfortunate bit of I don't want to say, it's just bad information that the healthcare system has been subject to. And most people don't think about it. As doctors, we don't have time. I mean, literally, you think, well, these doctors are sitting there thinking, oh, they're pontificating on our care. No, they're not. They got 10 minutes to make a decision. They're following a damn algorithm that was produced by some friggin' drug company representative at one of these organizations. And that's what it is. It's cookbook medicine, fill in the blank. And you got computers that tell you now how to do it. I mean, you get on the screen that says, oh, this patient's blah, 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 creatinine was high, recommend this diet, and it just tells them what to do in many cases. So they're just basically automatons. They're like robots. And because they get paid, the more patients they can get through their clinic, the more they get paid. And they're already, in a financial hole, at least in the U.S., you're taking out $250,000 of loans, and you got 3 small kids and you got a mortgage. You're just like, shit, let me just grind so I can make my money. You don't have time to sit there with smoke your pipe and think and ruminate on the patient's problem. It's like, get them in, get them out. And if I can just check a lag, give them a drug, pat them on the back and get them out of my clinic, that's better for me. My day's less complicated. I don't have to think too hard, because you're tired. Maybe you've been on call the night before, didn't get any sleep. You're like, just want to get through my day. That's the reality, unfortunately. And it's like, unfortunately, it's not an ideal way to do healthcare. I mean, some people would argue, well, it's as good as it is. It's the best we got, and mistakes were made, but hey, that's life. I mean, that's true, but I think there's a better way, but it's, like I said, it takes more time, takes more effort, takes more thought, takes, actually, listening to the patient in front of you and, actually thinking about these things in a non sort of knee-jerk reflex way, which is what many physicians have been trained to do. I mean, I was trained I was good at it. I mean, I graduated with honors. I was one of the top guys in my class. I went into really competitive specialty because I was good at memorizing crap. I could regurgitate anything. You put a gazillion facts in front of me, I could regurgitate 99% of them with 100% accuracy, right? I mean, I just figured out how to game the system to a way where you just learn. I mean, I would learn all the patterns and then learn the exceptions. I said, okay, this matches this pattern, boom. This is an exception, boom, and get A's on that. I got A's on damn near every test I ever took in medical school. I think I did. I got an A on every damn test I took, I believe, with rare exception. Maybe I got like an 88 one time or something like that. But anyway, I mean, it doesn't allow for critical thought in most cases.
No, I agree. So the last question, and then right at the end, I do want to go back to Rivera and just talk a little bit about that. You used the word misinformation from the government. So that made me think, I really need to ask you about this, although this is already in my notes. What about people that say we have got to eat plants because it's going to save the planet?
Well, no, it's not going to save the planet. Again, I'm not here to tell. I'm not here to say that every person on the planet needs to be on a carnivore diet or should be, or even, I don't care what you eat. I mean, if you want to eat a plant-based diet, good for you, more power to you. Hopefully you have good luck with that. But to think that, that is the solution to saving the planet is complete garbage. I mean, you could make the argument that how we produce our food rather than what our food is, but how it's produced, whether it's plant or animal, will have a bigger impact. Yes, we can pasture animals in maybe perhaps a different way. Yes, we can instead of, maybe have no-till crops, things like that can be better. So if we're going to talk about how we're going to adjust the agricultural system to improve, and I don't think it's going to save the planet regardless. Can we improve the outcomes? Yeah, I mean, should we stop putting plastic and garbage all over the world and polluting our streams and oceans? Absolutely. I mean, I think those things are there, but going plant-based is not going to be the answer to that. We still have to eat. I mean, if you do that largely to the detriment of the human species, which I think would be a tremendous detriment, make more sick people. Sick people are more environmentally harmful than healthy people are. I mean, in many ways. I mean, sick people, the healthcare system is incredibly pollution intensive. In the United States, between 4 and 10% of our greenhouse gases, if we want to use that particular metric, and I know some people think it's nonsense, but if we use that metric, healthcare system, 10%, right? Well, who uses the healthcare system? The sick people do. What if you feed them all a deficient plant-based ultra-processed? It's going to be ultra-processed, guaranteed. It's not everybody going to be eating blueberries and chickpeas. It's going to be ultra-processed fake crap products. That's what always happens. That's what historically happens. There's studies out there that show that people, the more plant-based they are, the more likely they are to consume ultra-processed food. I mean, that's just what happens. And they know that. And it's more profitable, by the way. So that is absolute, to borrow one of you guys' terms, bollocks. I mean, it's just total BS. It's not going to save the planet by any stretch of the imagination. In my view, and I think this is supported by a lot of guys, I mean, we would do better if we put more, grazing animals on pasture and graze them, appropriately to, resequester carbon, on and on and on. So, I mean, we there are things we can do, but agriculture is still not the big player. I mean, we'll put it in this way. We have to eat. There's no negotiation on the fact that humans need to eat something. And yes, is it going to have some sort of environmental impact? Of course it is. I mean, is it the major driver of whatever? I would argue no, particularly given the relative return we get on that, And when we took at, because one of the ways that people often make this argument, they look at it in terms of calories per unit of greenhouse gas production, right? And that's a very, it's not a particularly helpful metric or a goalpost. That's the goalpost, right? But if the goalpost is like, what about not just calories? Let's talk about nutrition. What about actually nourishing people and providing them nutrition that they actually need that is beneficial to them? When you start doing that, then we start seeing beef come way down and other lettuce start going way up, because lettuce is a waste of money. It sucks up so much water. There's no nutrition in it. People eat it, just rabbit food, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, it's just, what are you measuring? Are you measuring human thriving and human nutrition and what it takes to produce it? Are you just measuring how many calories can I throw in front of my face, which makes me fat and stupid and mentally ill and stuff like that? So, I mean, what do you want the world to look like? And I would like to see healthy, robust, vigorous people. I mean, we're at a point in society where there's never been this much wealth. There's never been this much opportunity. I'm talking worldwide even, and particularly in Western countries. The United States is so ridiculous. I mean, we have so much wealth and resource, and we got the fattest, damn, sickest, most depressed people in the world just about. And there's no excuse for that. I mean, we should have a bunch of people that are just like lean, robust, vigorously fit, warrior people. As far as I'm concerned, if it was up to me, man, anyway, it's not up to me, and probably for good reason. If I was there, I'd probably piss a lot of people off. If somebody made me the Surgeon General, I'd be up like, all right, let's go, man. I don't know. I mean, because we got this presidential election. RFK has talked a little about it. I talked to his running mate, Nicole Shanahan. She interviewed me the other day about this. And I said, if you're think about it, if you're the leader of a country, whatever, the UK, the British, British PM or the monarch or whatever, how do you sit there and sleep at night knowing your population health is a bunch of sad, fat, sick, depressed people? That should be like, it's just a matter of pride. Like, hey man, let's have a company. Let's have a country of vigorous people. Why not? You've got the resource to do it. Why not have a national campaign? Like, let's get off your ass and get out there and start doing stuff. Start eating well. Stop eating the garbage. When we have these elections, in which we have, and this year you guys just had one in the UK. I mean, you vote every day by what you buy. Who you choose to keep in power is based upon what you give your money to, and knowingly or unknowingly, Every time you go into, I don't know, what are your Tesco or something like that, you buy the ultra processed garbage. Guess what? You give those guys more money to do whatever they want to do to you, right? And so you're voting every day with that. When you give it to the local butcher, he's not going to screw you, or these other guys, yeah, they're going to make you addicted to their product. They're going to, overcharge you on the markup. They're going to make you sick. They're going to put you prey to the widely inefficient and predatory healthcare system. So think about that, stop voting for the criminals.
Yeah, that's great. And, the phrase I used to use is, how do they sleep at night? Until someone said, because they have different values to you. You couldn't sleep, Stephen, because you care, but they can sleep because they don't. I mean,
of course. Yeah. They self-selected. I mean, if they weren't sleeping, they wouldn't be in the job. I mean, they basically said, hey, look, whatever. I sleep well. I sleep well in my, my $20,000 custom bed and my, my 6,000 square foot mansion or on my yacht in the Mediterranean. I mean, they sleep well. Sure they do.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you missed out on the 24-hour live stream, and I'm very conscious of your time, is you didn't meet Richard Smith, the Keto Pro, and I thoroughly recommend.
I've talked to him before, though, I think. We've talked before. I think the live stream you did the year before, I met with him. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you should have him on your podcast because
I have had him on. Him on. So, yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, then I'm misinformed. The reason I say that is because he's organising the Carnivore Conference with a guy called Ben Hunt, and that's Saturday, Sunday, 14th, 15th September 2024. So if you're in the UK and you're thinking, hey, Stephen's got another American doctor on, he's not thinking about the UK. Well, I've got Shawn on because people will watch and then they'll hear what I just said. So if you want to,
there you go. Good for you. Yeah, get out there, come check it out. I think I'm actually speaking in Ohio that weekend. I think I've got to do I'm crazy. I'm the keynote speaker at this veterinarian conference. I don't know why it's sort of weird. I mean, interesting. I'm speaking literally at the end of this week, Saturday in Nashville, at the Bitcoin conference, and Trump is actually speaking on the same day as me, and in the same area. So. It's going to be kind of weird. I'm sure there'll be all kinds of Secret Service and all that stuff. And I think RFK is going to be there and a bunch of other. Russell Brand's going to be there. Tulsi Gabbard's going to be there. So it'll be interesting if I run into Russell because he's a vegan. So I think he is. Maybe he's not anymore. But anyway, it's going to be a big event and we're going to we'll get some information out there. It's going to be kind of fun. We're reaching larger and larger. In fact, I just saw that maybe Elon Musk may be trying out carnivore, which will be quite interesting to see if he ends up doing that. So.
Yes, I noticed that. You mentioned he had steak and eggs for breakfast in his new.
Yeah, but I think he just did an interview with Jordan Peterson, and he basically on the air. I think I'm hearing that he said, "Look, I'm willing to try this before I undergo some sort of surgical procedure." I can't remember what he's thinking about surgery, maybe back issue or something like that. So he said he's willing to try carnivore diet for a couple months, and so we'll see. That'll be, if he does it and he gets a good result, that could be quite influential. So we'll see.
Well, Shawn, thanks for your time. You were a big miss on their 24-hour live stream, but you've more than made up for it. And like I said to you before we started, Dr. Abs sat in for you and was absolutely brilliant.
Tell Dr. Abs, thank you for doing that. And I apologize to anybody that missed me on the live stream. I like I said, I totally got messed up trying to take care of my mom, and I just forgot about it, and it's my bad.
Okay. Finally, then, on Revero, I just wanted to ask, am I right in assuming that Ben Bickman is on your team?
Ben Bickman is part of our research team. Yeah, so we will be publishing our research data, our clinical data as we accumulate. Yeah, he's one of the researchers that we hired as a consultant, and so yeah, like I said, we got some good people, man. We got some great doctors. We're licensed in all 50 states. We're rolling out. Mostly we're in Texas and Florida, but we'll be expanding to the other states very shortly. We've got something like 12,000 patients on the waiting list. So, I think we're going to be doing some good things, and I think we're going to change the paradigm for healthcare, and it's needed, and I think, it's like something that I really appreciate, the people that are willing to, team up with us in a way. I mean, obviously as a patient, our goal is to fix you, but at the same time, you are also helping to shift the entire paradigm of healthcare by willing to do this. And it's really important to realize that this change is not going to come from the top. It's just too conflicted at the top. It's going to come from people like you and me doing the groundwork and getting it done, and the patients that are willing to say, we want to support something like this, and we want to, because it's going to take millions and millions of us to actually change the markets, to change the landscape. So yeah, we need support. We need, we obviously trying to provide the best care we can, but it's something that has to change in my view. I mean, I just don't see society. It's gonna implode upon itself if we don't fix things. And I think there's too many people that make too much money on the old system. I mean, it's just so lucrative. Like I said, I could have easily at this point done some very probably unethical things and made a lot of money, and I'm not willing to do that. It's just not who I am, and for good or bad. Hopefully for good, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. And if I was pushing high carb and all the things I don't believe in, my YouTube channel would be 10 times as profitable. But yeah, you're doing the right thing. I want to thank you for your website as well, by the way, because when people ask for success stories, I always put them to my website, which, like I say, has got about 1,000, but I think you've got in the tens of thousands of people that have done some testimonials, and it's an amazing website. So there'll be a link in the description to that. Shawn, I just want to thank you one more time. And just before you go, I spoke to Ken Berry a couple of weeks ago, and he off the top of his head said, I wouldn't mind the figures for the carbon footprint, the problem of the pharmaceutical companies, and also for hospitals. And both of them, when we were looking at the damage they cause to the environment, when I did the research, are worse than the automotive trade. So running a pharmaceutical company does more damage to the environment than transport. Simple as that.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, yeah, like I said, healthcare is incredibly, it's research intensive. I can just remember doing one surgery. I would do one surgery, and literally it'd be literally 8 to 12 55-gallon cans of garbage, paper and plastic and crap and draping, just for one procedure. I can remember bags and bags of trash every time I did a surgery, and I would do multiple a day. And it was just like, you just kind of, that's the way it is. But in retrospect, you're like, God, look how wasteful we are for this stuff. What if you didn't need the surgery? Well, how much trash would you save just on that? I mean, it's amazing.
Shawn, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me. And if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.